Hey folks, this is Matt aka Slash, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. This is a very cool spaceflight game from indie developer Squad, and I think as of version 0.19, it became available for Linux, which means that I was able to play it and do a series on it. I first became aware of this program through Kurt J. Mack, who does Farlands or Bust, and he also has a Kerbal Space Program series. I'm very excited to get started on this game. I really enjoy it, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that it became available for Linux. So let's get started, and I'll talk more about it as we get into it. Concept being, this here is Kerbin, and let's call ourselves here. Whoop. Let's pick a flag here. At some point, I probably will try to go in and add my own. But what do I like? This one looks cool. We'll go with Orbit. That will be the flag of our space program. So right now it's still in development. So right now it's very sandboxy. But we've got our flag over here. We can change the flag as desired, I guess, from that. We've got our launch pad over here. We've got a tracking station. Lets us keep track of our space flights in progress. We have a vehicle assembly building, VAB. That's where we will be building our rockets that we launch into space. And over here is a space plane hangar. That is for, obviously, building airplanes that can reach orbital velocities, or at least suborbital velocities. So there's a lot of really neat spaceflight mechanics in here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the VAB, and I'll go through the interface a little bit. Up here, you can give your spacecraft a name. Over here, and apparently you can pick... No, that doesn't do anything. That might do something later. Over here, we have the various cockpits that are available for the various spacecraft that you can create, including some... Well, this one's actually just a seat that you can slap on the outside for like a rover. There are some robotic controls. There's satellite cores and whatnot. We're going to go with the Command Pod Mark 1, which is a one-man pod. We click that and it throws it in here. And that's all we've got so far. Obviously, that by itself isn't going to do us much good. So we're going to have to go over to propulsion. And let's see here. We have fuel tanks. Is this the right size? There are a couple of... No. There are a couple of different sizes. That's for like a 3-person cockpit. What are we looking for here? That's a... that's more for a space plane. I'm looking for a smaller... Oh, here we go. Like these. Now, okay, hold on. Before we actually do propulsion, we want to do this in we're going to do a simple two-stage spacecraft. And by stages, what I mean is we're going to have... I'm looking for it. We're going to have decouplers. And if every time that they update... Man, I turned the volume of the music way down, but it's still very loud. A decoupler is a system by which you separate the pieces of your spacecraft as you're going. There we go. Here's a decoupler. I don't know if this is the right size. Yes, it is. All right, so we're going to throw that on there so that this pod can be released separately from the vessel. Now we can worry about propulsion. So let's throw a couple of these tanks on. What I'm going for from the initial, for an initial flight is I just want suborbital. I want to get up above the atmosphere and then come back down. I'm not going to try and get in orbit or anything like that. So each of these has a certain amount of fuel associated with it. It says liquid fuel 180, oxidizer, which is necessary for the fuel to burn, is 220. It tells you how much it weighs. So you can actually, most of the time it's trial and error with this, but if you want to, you can actually do calculations and come up with your lift versus your weight versus drag and all that stuff. So we'll do that. Let's also, under here on control, we're going to throw on an SAS module. This is a stability assistance or stability augmentation system, or spin auto stabilizer, or sickness avoidance solution. But what it is, it's basically autopilot. It allows you to tell the computer, hold this course. And I think that's all that we really need as far as that goes. There's also there's batteries. We're not going to worry about batteries. There's docking. We're not going to be doing anything with that this episode. Landing gear obviously is not a concern. Although we do want, let's throw one of these. That's a huge parachute. I think this is the one we want. So a parachute on the top that we can deploy. And that we actually want to have as its own stage. So we're going to move that down there. Plus gave me a new stage down here. Now let's get our actual jet engine. I think this is the big one. Yep, we need... I think this one? Nope. Jeez. This one. There we go. That is a tiny, tiny rocket. And then the only other thing that we're going to go for to get started here is this stability system. And what we're going to do is we're going to go with a tripod approach. Now, if I come down here, I can... Okay, right now, see how it kind of moves more or less freeform? If I click this, it will snap to angles. It's a little bit more snappy. So I think it's more noticeable with actual rocket parts than with this thing. And then there's a symmetry mode, and I can turn on 3x symmetry. And when I go to put a part on and it connects and puts through, you know, well, just like it says on the tin. Now let's bring this down a little bit closer to the launch pad, like so. And we have our first attempt at a rocket. Does this, okay, this is important. Does this engine have gimbaling? Gimbaling is, what should we put on this one? Gimbaling, you can see it. It will tell you, somewhere it tells you on here. Maybe it doesn't tell you anymore. Maybe they all gimbal these days. Huh, interesting. It used to tell you whether it gimbaled or not. And gimbaling, oh, there we go. Thrust vectoring enabled. That's what it's called. So thrust vectoring, it doesn't appear to be on this one. Alright, let's put some aerodynamic surfaces on it then. Some very basic, little kind of flaps. These little winglets I think will be good. There we go. We'll try that. This will probably be a disaster, but that's the way Kerbal Space Program tends to go. So we will call this the very original name of Suborbital Mark 1. And we'll save it. And then we'll send it to the launch pad. And hope for the best. I like the new loading icon. I think that's new in 0.20. It's a very, very tiny little rocket that we have on the launch pad right now. And we have good old Jebediah Kerman in the pilot seat. If we go, we can do intravehicular activities. So now we can see inside. Ooh, it looks like we could actually see out if I hadn't mounted the parachute right on top. And they've got light streaming through. Oh, from right there. Okay, not bad. You can actually see the control surfaces here as well. All right, get back outside. Let's see what this thing can do. We'll hit S to turn on the S. Hello? Oh, no, it's not S. It's T. T turns on the SAS system. And then Shift throttles up over here. And Control throttles down. We're going to throttle up to about 80%. And then the way the staging is set up over here, when I press spacebar, this stage will activate, which means the engine will start burning and these clamps will release. and we'll just start shooting up into the air. And then on the next stage, we will drop off all these fuel tanks off the bottom, and then finally we'll deploy the parachute when the time feels right. The goal here is to get up high enough that this atmosphere reading goes all the way down to here, indicating no atmosphere. And then we'll have this ballistic trajectory and come right back down. So let's see if we got it. We'll launch. Now. And away we go. Yeah, they've done some definite improvements with the graphics. This is actually my first time playing this version, 0.20. I played a little bit on 0.19, had some issues getting it to run. Otherwise, this series would have started probably a month or two ago. But now with 0.20, it's running just fine. So we're just gonna aim for straight up, more or less. Although you can see right here, this is straight up. And the system, despite me having the SAS on, has started listing a bit to the side. So I'm going to turn the SAS off. Hit caps lock to turn on the fine-tune controls. These turned blue over here. And we're just going to correct a bit to our right. Like so. And then when we get the heading we want, we'll go SAS back on. Good enough. The yellow mark here indicates the direction we're actually going versus this sort of V shape right here with the dot in the middle, which indicates the direction we're facing. Because in space, you can face whichever way you want, and your inertia will carry you the direction that you were going previously. I do not have high hopes for getting to orbit with this design, unfortunately, because for some reason, we keep listing off to the side. Let me straighten her out once again. Come on, computer, lock on that heading now. Whoa, whoa. Alright, what I'm doing right now is I'm holding down the F key, which is the SAS toggle. That allows me to have the SAS off, and then when I release, it turns it right back on. Is that gonna hold this time? No, we keep listing to the left. We must not have our balance set up very well for some reason, even though there's very little on this rocket. So we'll just try and keep it centered more or less manually. So there's our altitude. We just crossed 14,000 meters, and we are in a thinner part of the atmosphere, as indicated by the change in color up here. So that's very cool. Jeb is having a heck of a time. He loves it. It's the best thing ever. Alright, we'll continue straight up here. Whoa, Nelly. This is really difficult to control manually. I don't know why the SAS doesn't like me for this rocket. I mean, it's a dinky little rocket. Generally, you know, to get up into orbit, you need to have a lot more power. You'll generally have multiple stages. You'll have a stage to kind of get you off the ground. Speaking of which, let's put the throttle up the rest of the way. And let's try the old SAS again. Now that we're in a thinner part of the atmosphere. Stop doing that. Correct. Well, SAS does not like us right now. Now, we're in a thin enough part of the atmosphere that we're actually not using these winglets so much to change our direction like a plane would. Now it's because the engine actually moves back and forth and changes which direction it's pointing, causing the rocket to kind of pivot in the opposite direction. Alright, we have achieved a suborbital flight. Now, it occurs to me, now that it's too late to really do anything about it, that perhaps I should have aimed a bit more off towards the ocean so that we don't come crashing down on land. But, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I guess. Ooh, space music has started. That means we made it. Let's hit the M key. This shows us our orbital map and shows us our trajectory. So right now, we're actually we actually have quite the high suborbital flight here. What's happening here is we're going along this blue path, and right up here is our apoapsis, which is the general term for the peak of your orbit, the furthest point out, altitude-wise, that you're getting to. And we're actually at 282 right here, which is pretty far out. It's a lot further out than we really needed to go. But I can showcase some systems while we're just sort of in free fall right now. Obviously, the engines are off, but we have built up enough momentum that we are still going up along this curve. And you can see if I hover over here, our velocity is dropping even as we are going up. And eventually that velocity will hit essentially 0 in about 4 minutes. And then we will start accelerating again in the opposite direction to splash down in the ocean. If we were to do a full-on orbital flight, which we'll attempt next episode, what we could do is, first of all, we tried to get this apoapsis closer to maybe 100,000 meters for better use of fuel. But then right around the apoapsis, we would click and do add maneuver. And this is where the game really got cool when they added this feature. Now I can drag these little change of velocity indicators and tell it, okay, this is what I'd like to do at that point, and what effect would that have? So if I say I want to accelerate, say in this direction, see how that's widening our orbit? If I scroll wheel out here a little bit, we can do this until we get to a point where it says, boom, you actually have an orbit. There's a periapsis, which is the point of the lowest altitude of an orbit, and then you start swinging back outward again. So that's pretty cool. And then what happens if we accelerate off in this direction? Well, that causes the orbit to rotate around the planet like so. Alright, very cool. And what happens if we accelerate away from the planet? Well, that causes it to rotate around the planet that way. And now we have this apoapsis that's way out here, so we could adjust this back down to, say, there-ish. So that would give us a 146 by 400. So a wonky orbit, yes. But not too bad. Let's fix this a little bit more. Bring that around like that. Oh, that's not quite right. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to... Whoops. I'm dragging the wrong thing. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to try this because we ran out of fuel. So, this is all just a fun little exercise to see what happens. But this will become very useful whenever we do an orbital flight. Now, let me show you. If we click this, this pulls this up. And this is telling us on our little indicator here. Actually, let me go back to this view, just to double check our altitude. Okay, we're still good. We're still going up. But this tells us if we were to burn in this direction, burn meaning obviously just run the engines, in this direction, until we have achieved almost 2,000 meters per second change in velocity, which it can't quite figure out how long that would take because we don't actually have any fuel to do it. So that's why this is freaking out. But if we were to do that, then we would end up on the course that we just plotted in one maneuver, rather than having to fire in the direction we're going and then fire perpendicular to the direction we're going. This does all those calculations for us, which I think is very, very cool. And it also gives us a countdown to when we get to that maneuver node, which is also very cool. Everything about this game is cool, in case you didn't notice. Our resources we can track up here. Electrical charge would be for running the lights. Liquid fuel and oxidizer is for the rocket itself. Lights we could turn on and off up here if we had any. There's also brakes. If we had wheels on here, we could put the parking brakes on. And gears we could turn on or raise and lower with that button as well. What else is there to showcase? Oh, we can warp time as well, because especially, you know, going from, you know, Kerbin to the moon, you know, that's quite the distance out there. Let me get rid of this. This is not actually going to end up happening. But that's quite the distance away. So it would take a while. Once we're done, we're just with our maneuvers. We're just waiting to get out there. So what they've done is they've added a time warp ability into the game where I can come up here, or using keys on my keyboard, and I could just go like this. Oh, ship is not... Alright, fine. X. Alright, so we can accelerate. Now we are moving at 10 times the original speed. And we can go up to a certain point. Now, eventually, the game will actually say you're too... Whoops, there we go. It just went down to 50, and now it's down to 1, because now we're about to re-enter the atmosphere. So, since we're about to do that, I'm going to go ahead and jettison the rest of the rocket. Get myself... Whoa! Ho, ho, ho. That was impressive. Get myself turned opposite of the direction... maybe, that we're going. Not that I think it matters. I don't think they've added the atmospheric effects yet. But let's just go ahead and do that. Ooh. Fiery. Oh, you can hear it too. Listen. That's pretty neat. Alright, now we're through the thickest part of the atmosphere. Ooh, we got some crazy turbulence going. Let's go ahead and deploy the chute. Right now it just acts as a drag chute. And eventually we will get to an altitude at which it will decide that we should have a full-on chute. Down here's our debris that we can track as it falls below. And apparently, due to rotation of Kerbin, we're going to come down in the middle of nowhere anyway. Oh, their piece exploded, their piece exploded, their piece exploded. Chute deployed. And down we come. And Jebediah could not be happier. Can we see the chute from in here? No, doesn't look like it. What's neat is that these controls in here actually work. So you can see there's the SAS controls, so I can turn them off because we're in free fall now. I can adjust the throttle, and the throttle goes up and down. If I try to maneuver here, that nav ball moves around. Very, very neat the way this is set up. You could conceivably conduct a good chunk of your flight from in here if you were hardcore. That might be a challenge that we attempt in a future episode. Go back to the map. Yeah, Kerbin actually rotated quite a bit underneath us because we launched from over here-ish. And then it rotated quite a bit under us while we were doing that real sharp peak. And we ended up coming down over here in the mountains. So that could conceivably be a problem for Jeb. Oh, no, we're in. We landed. We're on our side, but we landed. And now the final little feature I'll highlight before we call... Oh, the hatch is obstructed. Can we roll? Let me try rolling the capsule. There we go. Oh, too far. Stop rolling. I don't know how I still have control over this thing. Let's see if we can't go outside the vehicle. Good job. Let go. And he's up. Jebediah Kerbin successfully... Watch out! It's coming right at you. Jebediah Kerbin successfully flew the first suborbital flight of the Kerbal Space Program. At least my version of it. In this version of the game. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. That's sort of a sneak preview. Although, it ended up being about a full-length episode. But next time, I think what we're going to try is getting an orbital flight going. Something that we can get up into Kerbin orbit, spend a couple of orbits just checking out some of the mechanics, maybe do some orbital EVA, floating around up in space outside of our spaceship, and then try to deorbit and get us as close to the shore next to the Kerbal Space Center as possible. That will be the challenge. So, until next time, thank you guys for watching Kerbal Space Program. Let me know if you like this series by clicking the like button. And if you want to see more of it, you know, that will encourage me to do more. Thanks again for watching. I believe I said that already. And we will see you all next time.